คุณครับทุกคนที่นี่พูดภาษาอังกฤษได้ไหมครับนิดหน่อยเข้าใจภาษาอังกฤษได้ไหมพูดภาษาอังกฤษเข้าใจภาษาอังกฤษใช่ไหมโอเคผมว่าผมพูดภาษาไทยแต่ว่าไม่เก่ง so I think it's better I do some Thai some English. Hello, thank you, Kun Fong, and thank you to BCC for inviting me to speak to your, I believe it's the first session of this club, so that's very exciting. And I guess it's exciting that you guys are taking time out of your summer holiday right now. So what brings you, why are you taking time out of your summer holiday for this and not going on a holiday? Does anyone have a reason why you're coming here today? Interested. Okay. Interested in the concept of entrepreneurship. Can I ask what makes you interested? Is it making a lot of money? Is it working for yourself, having control over what you're doing every day so you don't have to listen to a boss? Or control of your time? I'm hearing one person say control over their time. Is there any other reason why you're interested in entrepreneurship? Okay, just thinking about it. I'm interested in hearing more. Okay, so I was interested in entrepreneurship for my whole life. My hero when I was your age was Bill Gates. I read every book I could find about Bill Gates because he was kind of interested in computers like I was, and seemed like he was able to influence the whole world just by doing some of the same things that I was doing, like computer programming and thinking about new ways to make software. And so ever since I was like 12 years old, I always wanted to start a business. And so I'll talk a little bit about that, about my experience becoming an entrepreneur in my 30s, I guess. I'm 38 years old right now. And I'll also talk about sort of what kind of things it takes to be an entrepreneur and different skills that you might want to acquire in order to become an entrepreneur. Okay, so a little bit about me. So again, my name is Michael, and I was a software student taking a Bachelor of Mathematics at the University of Waterloo in Canada, where I'm from, in the early 2000s. And then after that, I was a business analyst and programmer with basically large investment banks like Lehman Brothers and several others in New York City as well as in Canada after I graduated. And then I became executive director of an AI research group called OpenWorm. And from there, I got very interested in coming to Asia to try something new. I was kind of bored. I worked for 10 years at a job. The same, experience every day. You come to the office, you do some work, you have some meetings, but there's no sort of control over your destiny, right? You're doing what somebody else is telling you to do. So I felt like I really wanted to finally, fulfill my dream of starting my own business. So at the same time, I was interested in kind of leaving the cold country of Canada, so I came to Asia. Now this is maybe a mistake. The best thing you can do as an entrepreneur is to start a business that you're already familiar with, in a place that you're already familiar with. So the best thing you guys could do, or the easiest pathway to success, would be not to do what I did and go to a completely different country where you don't speak the language and try to start a business, but instead to do it as close to home as you possibly can. Maybe your parents have businesses, do it in the same industry as that would be great. Or at the very least, try close to home at first. That would be my recommendation to you. But if you want to take even larger risk, go ahead and start a business in Brazil or something. Go crazy. So I did that. I actually came to Thailand to be the CTO of an e-learning company called DIN. We were teaching languages using an innovative technique to teach the tones, because for English speakers, very hard to learn the tones, ma, those tones, right? It's easy for maybe you guys, but hard for us. So we had this app to teach these different tones and develop that. And I think the lesson that I learned from that experience, where it wasn't a big success, we didn't get lots and lots of users, is it's important if you're going to make a venture scale startup, or one where you're trying to get external funding, is you really need to find something that has a huge difference from what's currently available. So what we had, I think, was a pretty good idea, but it needs to be something really significantly different from what's currently available if you want to disrupt an existing market. The other way to start a business is you find an area where there's growth, a lot of growth, and something, maybe it's just starting out. For example, drones, where I started my second business here in Thailand. And so in that area, not everybody didn't already have a drone, they didn't already have their drone provider selected, and so there it's a lot easier. It's a much easier thing to start a business in an area where people are just starting to get started, because you don't have to compete against their existing provider. You don't have to convince people to switch from what they're currently doing. Because as an entrepreneur, you're kind of the enemy of inertia. So everyone is doing their regular thing all day long. They're doing what they always do. Everyone's used to the usual thing. And your job is to find what could be different, what could change. What's something that you'd like to see different in the world? This is a very unique thing. I mean, most people, they don't think of things in these ways, right? They just want to go through life and not change much of anything. They want to maybe have success. Maybe they want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or something, but that doesn't require changing the world, right? As an entrepreneur, you're trying to find something that should be different. And to do that really requires breaking through an inertia that everybody has. And it's much easier to do that if you're kind of surfing along a wave of change that's already happening, rather than trying to break people's way of doing things in an existing industry. Okay. So that leads me into already said Fling. Does anyone know what Fling means in English? The word Fling? Yes. Fling, like this. If you go to fling.com, please don't do that. It's like a dating website. That's not us. It's a different company. Fling can also mean, having an affair or something, but that's not what we're up to. So yeah, Fling is like throwing something through the air. The original idea behind Fling was I was stuck in traffic one day in Bangkok. There was, rotate map, and I wanted to go quickly. And so I thought, why couldn't we use all this space up in the air? I saw some maybe birds flying around, and it was so free and easy, and we're all stuck down on the ground. So I thought, well, why can't we change the way everyone is behaving? Why can't people start to use drones? Maybe not to carry people right away, but at least to carry, our food, our packages. I see all these motorcycles stuck on the road, can't move very quickly. So that was the original concept with Fling. And I'll tell you a little bit about how we evolved that concept from drone delivery to something where we really had traction with customers. Because drone delivery was my idea without any experience about the industry of drones and what's possible and what people really want to pay for. And what it turns out is drone delivery is very exciting. The media writes a lot of articles about drone delivery. Have you all heard about drone delivery? Yeah? What company have you heard of that does drone delivery? Amazon. Yeah, so Amazon, like 10 years ago, they announced they were going to do drone delivery. Has anyone here received a delivery from Amazon using a drone? No, right? So if even Amazon, with trillions of dollars or whatever, doesn't do drone delivery, that says something about the viability of that business, right? So it turns out that drone delivery is a very challenging thing to do. In a way, it's sort of the worst possible idea for a business, in a way, because it's illegal, it's really hard with lots of technology problems. Every little delivery you do, you're risking the chance of killing someone because the drone could fall out of the sky and hit somebody, right? The amount of money you can make per sale is extremely small. Like, what's the cost of a food delivery in Bangkok, right? 20 baht, 30 baht, something like this. and it requires, really, as I say, really advanced engineering and really complicated investment in technology. So in a way, if you could think of the worst possible idea, it might have been that one. And yet that was what we started Fling with. That was our initial idea. And I think that's really important as a lesson for you guys as you think about starting a business, which is the initial idea is really not that important. You might think, and this is what I thought when I was, your age, thinking I wanted to start a business. I thought I needed to wait until I had the perfect idea. I had to sit at home, like in my chair at home, and just think and come up with some brilliant idea. Like it would just come into my head, and then I could start my business, right? But actually, you don't need to have a perfect idea. You don't even need to have a good idea. You just need to have a lot of energy and some concept of maybe a domain you want to work in. Maybe you want to do something with software or something to help people in a rural village or something. But you need some direction. But the initial idea, and you should have an idea to start something concrete, but you don't need to stick with that idea. And that's, I think, really, really, really important to understand that you guys need to not worry so much about having a brilliant idea, because really every idea does not really survive collision with reality. Is that how do I describe collision with reality? So when you have your brilliant idea and you spend 2 years making it, as we kind of did with drone delivery, we spent a lot of time designing a drone and building a beautiful drone delivery app. And then when we finally, brought it out to the real world, we realized that our app is not so beautiful compared with like Food Panda or Grab. We can't, 2 engineers can't possibly compete with a real, seriously developed app with 100 engineers, right? So the app is, not that great. And really, people already are very happy with their delivery service. It's very fast. It's very cheap. And we couldn't do the delivery in many places. We had to go out into Pattaya to do a delivery, right? So that's not to say the idea would never work, but maybe we're too early or something. But my point is, when we put it into the real world, we got so much information that would have been hard to get when we first had this idea. We tested it in the real world, right? We tried many things in the real world. And so that's where we evolved the idea of Fling. Because in talking to many people in the real world, many real customers, big companies, we'd show up at logistics conferences, like at BITEC. Has anyone been to BITEC? Yeah, so they have many kinds of conferences. So I would recommend, if you have a business idea and you have an idea of what industry you want to do it in, you can look up every week. There's a different conference about warehousing, about security, about fashion, about makeup, anything you can think of. There's probably some kind of BITEC or impact conference. So I highly recommend you go to this conference and you can walk around and you can see, here's one business and here's another business. You can look around and see what's available. And this is what we did. We had a whole booth we made about drone delivery, and people like to talk about it. So a lot of people are excited about the idea. But are they going to give you money for it? That's the real test of a good idea, right? Not just that people are excited to hear about it, but that they will pay money for the service or product that you create. So at these kinds of conferences, we ended up hearing from people that had lots of problems that they needed solving with drones, but it wasn't about drone delivery. It was about things like, I need to do some inspection of my refinery or of my power lines, or I have this warehouse and I think it would be better if I could do stock checking with a drone inside the warehouse. And as we thought about this, at first I'm very stupid, right? At first I say, no, that's not us. We don't do that. We're only drone delivery. And I would say no to many people. I said, no, please go away. But eventually I got smarter. And I realized, wait a minute, these people, they might pay us money for this. I think we should listen. So, it took me a while. I'm sure you guys are smarter, you wouldn't have done that. But for me, it took me a little while. I was very excited about drone delivery. But eventually I got smarter and I realized these guys will pay me money for something else. So about 2.5 years ago, we started this business. Actually 3.5 if we count the period where we were kind of doing drone delivery. And we've now, we got an institutional investor with True, and now we do inspections, and we write custom software for a whole variety of large enterprises here in Thailand. And a staff of about 20 people, and we've flown over 10,000 kilometers for inspection, and some logistics missions as well in Thailand. So the key is to listen to your customers. I'll just show some examples of things that we do at Fling. So this is called Transmission Tower. I think it's SAO 5, something like that. SAO 5. And here we're using drones to inspect the tower and use AI to identify defects in this tower. And then, as I mentioned, for indoor inspection, we use drones to take pictures of the pallets in the warehouse. Again, this is an idea that would be very hard to come up with, I think, if you're just sitting at home playing a video game, and thinking about ideas. You need to talk to real business to find these kinds of ideas. Okay. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we had some drone delivery pilots. So, what other things what is it like to be an entrepreneur, to start a business here in Thailand specifically? So this is an event called Startup Thailand. Have you guys been to Startup Thailand? No. I think there are several types of startup type events that are going on in Thailand. Last 1 year or so, of course, a lot of them canceled or postponed because of COVID. But I think they should start again soon, maybe. So there's Big Bang Digital Thailand, Startup Thailand, and I think there's quite a few events like hackathons and contests for students. So I would encourage you a lot to participate. You could form a team, you could come up with an idea and present it. I'm not sure if I think it might be mostly in the university and above, but don't let that stop you. And please, at least go to the event to look around if you're really interested in entrepreneurship, because you get to see a lot of startups. These types of events are great to just sort of learn about doing a startup, to get involved and understand the startup scene. But to be honest, it's not a great place to find a customer or an investor, because it's a very general event. So every industry, every topic is covered. The only common element is entrepreneurship. Whereas if you go to an event at like BiTech about security or about agriculture or something, it's very focused. So you can learn more about maybe that area that you're most interested in. Can I ask, is anyone here interested in one specific area of business? Maybe, I don't need to know your exact business idea, but is there an area that you're thinking you want to focus in? Anyone? Pardon me? Communication. Okay, communication. Yeah, that's fair. Can you be more specific? I can't see who's talking because of the masks. Who is the? Oh, I do. Yes. Okay. Nice. So would social media count as communication? Okay, stuff like that. Cool. Very good. So I can't think of a BiTech event that would be about that, but maybe there's some kind of social media. I'm not sure. I have to check it out. And then here's our shot of our team here. Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit more about what the startup scene in Thailand is like, because this was my experience over the last 3 or 4 years working in Thailand and learning about this. It's actually very different here in Thailand compared to America or Canada, where I'm from. So here, you might already know that there are many big companies in Thailand that dominate the economy. So in another country, like America, for example, there might be 1,000 companies, each of which with a very small part of the total economy. Whereas in this country, there's a smaller number of companies, maybe 100 or 50 companies, and each of them has a larger part of the whole GDP, the goods and services produced every year. And what that means is the relative importance of any one of those companies is much higher in another country. So when you're starting a business in Silicon Valley, you don't care about, Exxon Mobil or other companies that exist in the country, right? It doesn't really matter to you. You're just going to go and talk to a venture capitalist or to your startup friends and start the business. But here in Thailand, it's very important to think about the businesses that exist here, because they are the source of a lot of the demand. So you might start a business, and these are the guys that are going to be buying your service or product. They're going to be the gatekeepers for the markets that you want to get into. Have any of you seen the movie Billionaire, the Thai movie? Thai Billionaire, I think it's like 10 years ago, and it's the guy who started the seaweed, the crunchy seaweed. What's that guy's name? I forget his name. Top, right? Top, yeah. So Top, he's now a very rich man, right? And he started his business kind of similar age to you guys, right? He just experimented with different ways to deep fry seaweed. And then he found the perfect way, and he sold it. If you remember in the movie, who did he sell it to? 7-Eleven, right? Because they have the thousands and thousands of stores. Whereas in America, you probably wouldn't do it like that. You probably just sell it to various different stores. Whereas here, it was really important that he, make a good impression with, I guess, CPL, right? The company that does that. Not only are they the gatekeepers of buying your product or service, but they're also the source of investment funds. So SCB, for example, has what's called a corporate venture capital, or CVC, arm called SCB 10X. SCG has Ad Ventures. True has True Incube, which invested in our company, in Fling. Does anyone, this is a real difficult bonus question, but does anyone know another CVC in Thailand? It's probably too difficult. But you kind of encounter them as you try to start a company, because they all have like pitch events, and you'll eventually encounter them as you try to get your company funding. Pardon me? KPTT. It might be true. I actually don't know that. It's from PTT?
From KBank.
Oh, KBank. What's KBank's one called again?
KBTT.
Oh, KBTT. Okay. Okay. It's quite possible, yeah. But basically, every large bank, every telco, every I don't know, but every oil company. I think just PTT might have it, but yeah, they all have these venture arms, because they know that eventually, maybe not next year, but eventually they're going to get disrupted by one of these little startups that you guys are going to found. So they want to get ahead of that by having some piece of it. So that's why they're involved in that. And also, it's a bit of a publicity exercise for them. So be very careful, because it might seem like they're interested in your business idea, but often they just want to have a picture with you, or they want to hear about your idea and then try it themselves, right? So you need to be very careful with these guys. Think about their motivation. The motivation of these big companies is often it's kind of an arm of their, what do you call it? Social, what's the word? When a company has like a charity arm, basically, and they want to show that they do good, right? So a lot of companies, they have, of course, publicity or some kind of promotion for themselves to show that they're not just an oil company, they're not just a bank, but they're also helping the poor people in a village, or they're helping young people or old people, and this is important for their image. So often these sorts of venture arms, they think of that as being a way for them to show that they care about people. So if you go to a pitch event, often the best business idea is not always selected. You often find the best, the one that wins the contest is the one that sounds the best, right? The one that makes the judges look the best. So maybe it'll be like something that helps, blind people walk or something. Even if another idea was going to make way more money, this idea, it looks a lot better for the judges to say that they awarded the prize to this contest. So you often want to think of an idea, if you're going in this direction, you want to have some kind of angle that helps people. Even if your ultimate goal may be to make money, I think it's good to show that you have some angle there as well. It's also good to help people. If you want to win contests, you also need to think about that. Okay. So I would say that conceptually, well, let me ask you a question. Conceptually, why does any startup succeed? A big company like PTT or True or AIS, why can't they always beat the startup? Because they have thousands and thousands of people. They have so much money and cash, right? They can afford to hire the best people, the A players, right? The startups only get to pay a lot less. They don't have as much money. They don't have as much information. They don't have as many customer relationships. Shouldn't the big companies always win? Why would a startup? What is the advantage that a startup has? New ideas, but the big company, I'm sure they could have a meeting and they call 20 people into a room and they say, okay, give me your ideas. I don't know if it's ideas. I don't want to, maybe you're right, maybe a little bit, but I think ideas are kind of cheap. Everyone has an idea, ideas. So what's the advantage that a startup has? Pardon me? Velocity. What do you mean by velocity? Right, exactly. Speed. They can move quickly. So at a big company, now you all haven't had the opportunity to work at a big company yet, but some of you will probably get hired at a big company and you will learn that working at a big company, if you want to get something done, something new, it's really hard because you have to propose this to your boss, and then your boss has to think about it, and whether it looks good for him or not, or her, and then he has to propose that to his boss and the other boss, and then a committee from the other department will come in and maybe they don't like it because it's going to interfere with their IT system or something, and then you're going to give up because you get paid either way, so why should you try to push to get this idea to happen, right? So doing new things at a big company is very hard, and so it often just doesn't happen. And it's often, at a sort of a big scale, it's often sort of the wrong thing anyway, right? Because if your business is selling oil, it's going to be very hard to convince the shareholders and everybody in your company to stop selling oil and to do solar panels or something. So not just the bureaucracy makes it hard to do something new at a big company, but also just existentially, it's very difficult for a company that's already making a lot of money doing one thing to really change all of its processes to do something that may have higher growth in the future, but is not going to make money right now. It might be impossible for the executives that try to push this might get fired before the plan actually happens. So all that is to say that there's a big advantage as a startup, and you have to really take advantage of that, which is you can move quickly. You can have your 4 guys that you started your business with sitting at a table, and you can say, we were going to do this last week, but now we're going to do something else because we saw that there's a customer that wants something else. And you all just go, okay, we're going to do that now. So you can switch, you can easily change. And that's really, in a way, your only advantage. You really need to take advantage of this advantage to move quickly. And it's harder to start a company with only one person. It's a lot easier to start when you have other people involved, especially because you don't have to pay them. If you have a co-founder, that person doesn't need to get a salary. So you have this labor here. You can have enough people just in your founding team to hopefully get yourself to a point where you can validate that your idea has some meaning. And then you can assemble a pitch deck and approach investors if that's the direction you want to go. So that's probably the most important lean way to do things, is to have a set of co-founders. And I'd say that the ideal number is between 2 and 4, I would say, between 2 and 4. Less than 2 is not good. More than 4 is pushing it, because then it gets really complicated to make any kind of decision. So less than 4 is okay, but not really any more than 4 or 5, I would say. It starts to get way too much. 10 people, oh my God, never get anything done. Okay, I'd like to end my speech here and just talk a little bit about the difference between B2B and B2C. Does anyone know what does anyone know what B2B means? I guess you just saw the slides. It's kind of cheating. Who can tell me what B2B means? Business to business. Turkey, right? Something like that. Yeah. Business to business. And then business to C. What is the C in B2C? Customer, consumer. So everything that we encounter every day is B2C businesses. When you're on the BTS, you see advertisements. Do you see advertisements for industrial lubricants? Do you see advertisements for racking systems for warehouses? Do you see advertisements for the double hulls in large-scale transport vehicles on the ocean? No, right? You see advertisements for like steel manufacturers or for mining companies? No, right? Because these companies don't sell to us. They don't sell to the mass of consumers. Instead, you see advertisements for Lactosoy or for beauty products or clothing or e-commerce sites. And these companies take up a lot of the visibility that you and I see every day in our head, right? So you might think that the economy in Thailand and in the world is dominated by these businesses, and the B2B businesses, let's go back. The B2B businesses are less important because you never see them, right? They're hidden. Like these mining companies, these oil companies, you never see these guys, right? But actually, it's like an iceberg, and the tip of that iceberg is the stuff that we see. Because to construct a product like this laptop here, sure, Acer sold me this laptop, or maybe the retail company that actually holds it sold me this, and so they need to advertise that it exists. But they only get a tiny piece of the profit from that whole thing. The whole value chain that brought this laptop into existence involves silicon mining companies and plastics manufacturers and any number of other companies were involved, logistics companies, warehousing, and all of this, many of those companies take larger profits of the value chain than the final company that you encounter. And what that means is the kinds of ideas that you may come up with just talking to your friends and just sitting around and looking around in the city might not be the best ideas, because they're not necessarily targeting the biggest parts of the economy. This is why it's often very important to be a successful entrepreneur to have some real-world experience. So it's no shame, even if you have a very burning ambition like I did to be an entrepreneur, I would say it's no shame to spend some years working at a big company, because you get some experience, you understand how it works, you understand the nature of that industry, you understand how they buy some products and the problems that they might be facing, and with that information, you're going to be much better positioned to develop some idea that would work B2B. So I'm not trying to discourage you completely from doing a B2C business, but when I walk through Startup Thailand, I see many startups like booking a band. What other startups that I see? Like, I don't know, like lots of little ideas that are actually like the smallest little sliver of the economy, targeting very small, low-impact problems, right? I think not great business ideas. I think it's just, same thing as me, drone delivery. Is that the greatest business idea? Maybe not. So I would say, please, if you remember anything from my speech, please remember before, investing huge amounts of time and effort into a business, just talk to people who are in that industry who might end up being your customers. Talking is cheap. You can have a meeting, you can ask people to speak, and find out what they're really facing as problems. And I think if you do that, you can end up being a huge success. So I think I'll stop there, and I'm sure that there are many comments or questions, possibly. ขอบคุณครับ
So will you be accepting questions?
I will be accepting.
Yes. So ใครมีคำถามครับสามารถยกมือถามได้เลยนะครับ
Sure, go ahead.
What did you start with?
I gestured in a direction that covered two people, that's right. Okay, let's start back there. Ha.
How much money did you start with?
No comment.
So to start like an entrepreneur company, so we need to ask people what they want first, right? And then we ask people who want them first, and ask multiple companies, and then start like better to be right?
Yeah, there's no perfect procedure. Like there's no perfect recipe. You might have a great idea and then validate it by talking to people. You might talk to them over dinner and then they give you the idea. It might be some combination. You might talk to your aunt and she has an idea, and then it's really no precise answer. But you're definitely going to be better off with more conversations with your customers. Great question.
Why did you start your business in Thailand?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think if I was to do things over again, I would realize it would have been way easier, as I said, to start a business in a country that speaks English, maybe in my home country where I already knew a lot of people, maybe in the industry that I was working in finance. So in a way, I kind of did start up on hard mode, right? You're playing a video game, it's like hard mode, easy mode. I think I played on hard mode because I started in a country, didn't speak the language, sole founder, what else? Yeah, in a different country not familiar with. So to answer your question, why Thailand? Well, I was invited to be CTO of another company, so I was already here in Thailand. And I like the country, it's not as cold as my home country. And yeah, I saw the opportunity here because one of the really different things about Thailand versus other countries is just how online savvy Thailand is. It has the highest rate of, I think, Facebook use in the world. Everyone uses smartphones, like even if you drive out into the country, everyone's using a phone. So there's, I think, a lot of opportunity for the use of more technology, but people are already ready to use it and excited to use technology. So I saw that and I thought, well, do I want to start a drone company in Singapore where there's far fewer people and there's already lots of competitors and lots of amazing drone companies? Or do I want to start a business here in Thailand where maybe there's 3 or 4 companies doing anything with drones and 65 million people? So that's why I stayed in Thailand. Great question.
Does anyone else have a question?
So how would you say how in what way do you build a connection with people? What would you say is the most effective method?
So before I started Fling, I kind of thought of myself as an introvert. I like programming. I was a computer programmer for many years. I liked, staying at home on a Saturday night and just, either playing a game or using a computer. And it was surprising to me when I started to go to networking events. I started with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce here in Thailand. So I met a lot of people that looked like me when I first came to Thailand from doing that. But I was surprised that I actually enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed, hey, how are you? My name is Michael. What is your business like? Kind of just meeting new people and going into that environment and talking. I think it might be because when I went to entrepreneur networking events before, I didn't have a reason to be there. Because I didn't have a business. I was just, it just seemed like a waste of time to me. But suddenly when I had a business, it felt like every conversation was like getting me closer to a goal. And maybe that was why. And so I sort of thought of it like a game. So I think there's no magic answer to networking, but you definitely need to put yourself out there. So, call people up, send messages. One of the big challenges in Thailand that I should talk about is that there's a cultural, I think, idea that it's wrong to talk to people who are more senior. Like, there's something weird or rude to look up the CEO of some business and send him a message and say, hey, can we have a chat because I'm interested to hear more about your business and I'd like some advice, please. That's how Steve Jobs got his first job. He actually made a phone call to Bill Hewitt, which is the founder of Hewlett Packard, which is one of the big companies in California. And he was 15 years old or 14 years old, and he just called him on the phone and said, hey, do you think you could help me with this spectrum analyzer or something? And he laughed on the phone and then said, sure, yeah, we'll help you. And ended up getting a summer job at this guy's factory. So I would really encourage you to think outside the box here and realize that we're all people. Even if someone seems very senior and important, I know in Thailand there's this, as I say, there's this idea you can't talk to people, but I think if you're polite, don't be rude, but if you're polite about it, people are much more receptive than you might think. And maybe, half of them will ignore you or something, but, you try a few times, you'll get to something. Yeah.
มีใครมีคำถามอีกไหมครับมีเป็นภาษาไทยกับผมแปลให้ก็ได้
So I did say, if anyone has any business idea that they want to say, maybe they have some idea, I can comment on that. So I've done like MBA classes where we ask people who has a business idea, and then we can talk about it for a second. Maybe you don't have one.
มีใครอยากแชร์ไอเดียอะไรไหมครับที่ตัวเองมีแล้วคุณไมเคิลเขาจะคอมเมนต์ให้นะครับ
No pressure. What about you, Kunfang? You have an idea? You must have some business idea. Maybe you don't want to give it away. No pressure. It's okay. I won't put you on the spot. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess that's everything, right? Okay. Well, ขอบคุณมากครับทุกคนครับ